live in the right place as well. I think we're on. We are good to go. Let me just check. I just want to check something quickly myself. And then we'll get cracked into it. And there we go. We are in business in a big way. Nice. All right, we'll give it a second to let a couple of people roll on, and then we'll get stuck into it. We'll give it exactly, because I've got a little counter here. We'll give it 1 minute, just for anyone watching this on catch up, because I know a lot of people like to watch this on catch up. It's got a minute before we get cracked in to the podcast official. Yeah, there's a few people coming on already. I'm going to get the comments up, because the plan is this. I can just steal people's comments, see, and look really clever, as if I've got brilliant questions. But secretly... Yeah, exactly. Secretly, I'm just letting everyone listening go, oh, there's a good question. And I'll sort of subtly have a look over there. I probably won't, but I might. Who knows? Oh, there's Carol Ray. Yeah, we've got loads of... All the superstars are on already. This is going to be a good one. Cool. All right. I tell you what. We're almost there. We're almost on the... Hello, look, Nancy's on from the US. This is going to be interesting. We'll get stuck into it. So, Johnny... Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I've got to start with this. Johnny Johnson. That's a cracker of a name. That's like a movie star name, isn't it?
My parents weren't very... didn't have to think too hard about that one. I've had stick throughout my life for it, so I'm used to anything you can throw at me.
Yeah, no, I like it. Johnny Johnson. I think that's just got a bit of movie star. If I was making up a movie star name, it's the sort of thing I'd go for. A little bit of alliteration in there, Johnny Johnson. I like it. Maybe there's a movie down the line. On that note, who would play you in the movie?
My wife will kill me if I say this, but Bradley Cooper.
Yes, Corn Brothers. That is a good shout.
From Limitless. That's the only reason why.
Yeah, that makes loads of sense, and we'll get into that in a minute, because clearly that's inspiration behind what you do now, and that's that film or that concept inspired me as well. Mine would be Brad Pitt, by the way. Can't beat a bit of Brad Pitt, can you? He's a bit ginger as well, I think. Brad in disguise. I could see him. Yeah, he is. I'm claiming him. I'm claiming him as a ginger. Brad Pitt. He's the best looking ginger that's ever existed. But anyway. We digress. So where I wanted to start with, I want to start with a quote, actually, do something a bit different today. And this is the quote from T.E. Lawrence, who I think was the inspiration behind the Lawrence of Arabia. But he's got this quote, and it's really powerful and something that really resonates with me, and I think it will with you. And it's this: all men dream, but not equally. Those who dream by night in the dusty recesses of their minds wake in the day to find that it was actually vanity. But the dreamers of the day are dangerous men, for they act on their dreams with open eyes to make them possible. Isn't that beautiful, right? For me, what that says, that is all about the alcohol-free for me. That is, having spent 20 years of my life out socially in bars and clubs, listening to people, myself included, wax lyrical about all these amazing things that we were going to do after a few drinks. We were going to tell the boss where to go. We were going to start the new business. We were going to tell that special person how we felt. How many times have you been in that situation only to wake up the following day and you've flushed all those big dreams down the loo with last night's kebab? That, I think, is the story of so many people. But here's the difference between the drinker and the alcohol-free adventurer. I think the alcohol-free adventurer is a dreamer of the day. It's where things happen. You know, we put big statements out into the world and we take action maybe for the first time ever. And where I want to start with yourself today is that point where you met me. We both, for the first time we met together, it was, I think, in 2019 at the Club Soda event, mindful drinking event, and you found the courage. We'd never met, and you came up to me, you with your lovely wife who was heavily pregnant at the time. We sort of shook hands and you said, Andy, I listened to a podcast, it inspired me. I'm going to create this alcohol-free beer brand. And I was so impressed because it was a chance meeting, a quick meeting, and then I've seen your success that followed that. And that reminds me of that quote. It says to me that you are a dreamer of the day. You know, you made things happen because of your alcohol-free story. So where I want to begin is not there. I want to use that as our focal point to come back to. But I want you to begin maybe at the start when you first started to question your relationship with alcohol, and then together we'll walk back to that point where you met me and where the business was at that stage.
Yeah, of course. So similar to you, I worked in the City of London for 7 years. and I worked in a direct sales role. So I used to go out and see clients, and I worked with a lot of other sort of youngish people, and we used to, drinks on a Thursday, Friday night, drinks with clients, and that would be sort of during the working week, and then on the weekends I'd see my old school friends, and we'd go out drinking on a Saturday and maybe a Sunday, and it was. I suppose I grew up in my early 20s. It was sort of that booze Britain culture time, and it was just sort of, that was just what you did. You just went out. You went out every weekend. You got smashed. You went to a club, and it was all fine. But as I was towards sort of later in my 20s, I started feeling the hangovers a lot more, and I couldn't shake them off. Whereas like when I was like 18, I'll be up the next day, out again,
bounce off you.
It wouldn't even touch me. But when I was sort of 28, 29, the hangovers would last for a few days. And then working in a sort of in a sales role, you have to be on it, and you have to be working hard every day. Working with a hangover is just, the worst thing in the world. So it started to creep up and get worse.
I noticed even in what I did in broking, it was the same thing. I could be a hero one day and then absolutely rubbish the next. And the case was in broking like sales. If you don't pick up the phone and make the calls, you don't do the business. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah. And I would look around even at my broking floor on a Friday, and it would be decimated. I'd say if you actually tracked business on a Friday, there would have been this clear sort of drop off the edge of a cliff. But that was all dressed up in the name of entertaining clients. But if you net those two things off, the losses that you incurred from hangovers would have vastly outweighed the bonuses of taking clients out.
Yeah, and as well, the money that you would have saved by not, because on a Thursday night you could, it's not cheap in London, and I was always the guy that would get the shots in or suggest getting the shots in, and if you suggest getting the shots in, you got to pay for them. And it's, the next day your bank balance is like, I spent a bit too much last night. And then, like you're saying, then you don't perform the next day at work, and then you're not making any money, and it's a sort of a downward spiral.
Yeah, everything's a struggle, and like you say, it's not just even the expense of the alcohol. It's the cabs, it's the late night food, it's the fact that you don't perform at work the next day. And if you're in a sales role, it means you make less commission at the end of the month. The knock-on effects are absolutely massive. So you're in that environment, and what sort of point did you sort of feel that tug of, do you know what, maybe I've got to have a little think about my relationship with alcohol?
Well, so I'm going to go back another step, because I think this is probably what contributed for me to put, I wasn't drinking like excessively, but I was drinking more than what I would have normally, because in 2015 my dad passed away suddenly in an accident, and my mum and dad had divorced, so I was sort of had to sort out his estate, and it was really complicated and really stressful, but it sort of went on for 4 years sorting out his estate. And I think the stress of that, the stress of work, just the stress of life for paying my rent at the time and stuff like that, and I think each weekend it was, I'd work really hard during the week, and it's like, right, I need to blow off steam just to relax. So then you'd go out drinking, or I'd get absolutely wasted, and that sort of, it was just every weekend. And like I said, the hangovers started getting worse and worse, and it was actually at the point of I got married to my wife Antonia in Italy, and in 2018, that's lucky I remembered that, and I hope that's right, and we actually had a wedding party in London for anyone that couldn't come to the Italy wedding. And it was after that wedding party that I had like a 5-day hangover. And it was, I'd done copious amounts of shots. I drank way too much. And I felt really ill for 5 days. And it was just alcohol poisoning, basically. And it was, there's a few of my friends mentioned a couple of things that I might have done, that I did do, which, you just had that regret, and you think, oh, Christ, I wish I didn't do that. And so then I thought to myself, maybe I need to sort of knock it on the head for a bit. But the reason that I also thought that was because, Andy Liddell.
Yeah.
Who's a big part of sort of UNTLD.BEER in the community there. he's a mate of a mate, and I've been out with him a few times drinking, and he was a big boozer. Like, we'd go out and we'd have a proper session when I went out with him. But I heard he'd stopped drinking. So I was, and he'd lost loads of weight, and I was really curious because I sort of thought, oh, I can't believe he stopped drinking because he's such a big boozer. And then, so after that hangover, after the wedding party, I basically arranged to meet him, and I was just blown away by how he looked and how like switched on he was. And I'm going back to the film Limitless. I love that film about the pill that you take that opens up your receptors, it makes you super switched on, and he described it. He said it's like the Limitless pill, and I've always thought if that pill existed, that'd be great to take because be on top of your game all the time. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this a go. This alcohol-free, go alcohol-free for a bit, and that's where it all started.
All started to change. And Andy Liddell is a great lad, and I knew there was an Andy in your story. I didn't know it was Andy Liddell. That is so cool because I heard
it was you as well. So
2 Andys.
Yeah,
the Andys, are on fire. But Andy's a cracking lad, and exactly being part of his story and seeing him lose all the weight and do all the running. I mean, I meet him actually on occasions because he comes through where I live, Shenfield. But what I was going to say about that, I think what's so impressive about Andy's story in your story is that he's courage to do something a bit different and make this massive change has then had this direct influence on you, that you then had the courage to make this big change, which has led to this amazing alcohol-free beer brand. And I just think that's such a powerful message to get out to people, that it's not just about even doing something mahusif in the alcohol-free space. It's just about showing up as you and just loving being alcohol-free, and you will influence someone. Yeah. And right now we're training these wonderful accredited coaches with us, and the underlying theme that continually is played by all of these people in training is that if they can help just one person, wouldn't that be beautiful? And genuinely I believe that everyone in the alcohol-free space is, whether they know it or not, helping at least one person, if not many, many more. And I think that's just a beautiful message. So good on Andy, boy. So you meet Andy, you're inspired, and it's like, right, let's do it.
Yeah, so I was sort of skeptical about it because I was sort of thinking, no, because this, like you've said on numerous occasions, it's the peer pressure. So I was still working in the city. I still was, I was the party guy that people could rely on for a good night. So it was the fear of going to them or going to after work drinks and being like, I'm not drinking. And so then, I was speaking to him about that and the pressures, and he said, well, look, what's really a really good thing to do is listen to this Rich Roll and Andy Ramage podcast. It was like an hour and a half long, and I thought, I'd never listened to a podcast before. I didn't even know. I didn't really understand what they were.
Right. Okay.
But he said, listen to this podcast, and it will really resonate with you. And I remember it was on after that. We had a soda and lime outside this bar in the city, and I was on the train home. And I live about an hour out of London, so I listened to the first hour on the train, and everything that you said completely resonated with me. And it was, it was just that's just the way of life. That's how we sort of grew up.
Yeah.
But then you spoke about how good you felt from giving up the booze, and then how you've met all these people who've given up the booze and how their lives have changed drastically for the better. And so then I listened to, obviously I finished that podcast, but I then listened to virtually all the UNTLD.BEER podcasts. And that was my daily sort of motivation. So every day on the way into work and the way home, I'd listen to a UNTLD.BEER podcast. And it was most of them were of people who had been interviewed, who'd given up drink and how much their lives have improved. So it was sort of like, this isn't crap, your life gets better if you get the booze. All these people are saying it independently. And so that just spurred me on. And, people say there's like a 3-week mark. You hit the 3-week mark and then the lights sort of switch on.
Yeah.
And it did, bang on 3 weeks. Obviously, you sleep better. I was exercising more. I was happier. When I saw my family and friends at the weekends, I'd normally be hungover and I'd be a bit crap to be around. I'm not a fun person when I'm hungover.
Yeah.
But I started seeing family and friends not hungover, and it was like relationships got better. Like I said, sleeping better. I felt great. So it was like as the days went on, the feeling got better and better, and it did. It was starting to get like that Limitless pill. That's how it felt anyway.
the benefits just start to snowball a bit, don't they? And you touched on something there about relationships. I think that's so powerful, and I think it's overlooked by a lot of people because they assume we need alcohol to build relationships and whatnot. But actually, when you remove it, then you get that consistency in your relationships because you're starting to show up as you, Johnny, consistently rather than hungover and a bit cranky and a bit tired, like you said, and that sort of brightness comes back in. The relationships across the board get better, not only with, you know, your lovely family, but your colleagues and your friends. And I think that's one of the things that's overlooked a little bit. And I love to hear that in your story because it is really important. I think like relationships with your lovely wife as well, all of these things start to get better. So it creates this wonderful momentum in your life. And it is like the limitless pill. And we're going to get to that a bit later. So you're building up this momentum in your life. You're starting to feel really good. Like you say, around the 3-week mark, that 28-day type, there's some magic happens around then. And then what happens?
Sorry, I'm being a little bit blinded by the sun. The sun comes into this office, into the bedroom, like in the evening at this time. So I'm getting blinded a little bit. So I'm not crying.
Right, yeah, I like it. You're getting all emotional. I like you when you're getting emotional.
No, yeah. So basically, I set myself the challenge of the 90-day challenge. So I didn't sign up to it. I just said to myself, I'm going to, not drink for 90 days. And I went to, I remember so I went to an afterworks drink after a couple of weeks. So I avoided the first few weeks, and I went to the afterwork drinks, and I was drinking a cranberry and a cranberry juice because you don't really know what to drink when you first start drinking, right? So you order the cranberry juice, which is like a beacon of light.
That's a bit of a weak effort, that, and cranberry juice. That's saying to everyone, I'm not drinking. Please don't talk to me or involve me. I've got a cranberry juice. I'm armed with a cranberry juice.
But and then you can imagine the amount of stick that you get. It's just like, why not drinking? Why not drinking? There's all this peer pressure, and it got too much. So I had to leave because I just couldn't handle it because everyone's starting to get drunk around me, and so that was sort of my first experience, facing up to the peer pressure. But also I hadn't explored alcohol-free beers at this point, right, so I didn't think to order one of those at the bar because I sort of thought it was cheating. Alcohol-free beer because I'm trying to give up booze. So I sort of thought, no, I'm going to stay away from that. And it was after a couple more weeks that I actually missed just drinking a cold beer. Yeah, just the taste of it.
Something grown up. There's something grown up about that, isn't there? Rather than just water or sparkling water or whatever it is, cranberry juice in your option. Yeah. But there is something nice. I love the cold bottle of beer. There is something really nice about that.
And so what I found is that when I did go out, I went out for like a Sunday lunch and I had Heineken Zero or a Beck's Blue because that's all that they had in the places I went to, and I just didn't really enjoy them. It didn't really satisfy that need. So I was put off. But then I spoke to Andy Liddell again, and he said, "I'll go on to Wise Bartender, and they've got loads of alcohol-free beers. It's all the craft stuff's really good." Yeah. So I went on there and I ordered like 20 different brands and tried them out, but not all of them were great, but some of them were really tasty. And I was just really surprised. I couldn't tell the difference. So completely switched my way of thinking around alcohol-free beer. But the problem was they the good ones weren't in bars. And that just wound me up because I was just like, I don't want to drink. There's nothing against the big brands, but I didn't like the taste. It's my own personal preference, right? So that was sort of part of it. But then, because I'd given up booze, and this is probably about 60 days in, so 2 months in, I was sort of so full of life, and I was fed up being on the hamster wheel in the city. Because I used to leave my house at like 5:30 in the morning and get in about 7:30, 8 o'clock. And going back a couple of steps. So 2 weeks after giving up drinking, my wife fell pregnant, which was amazing. It's our first baby. I don't know if that was related to not drinking. I probably was. So she fell pregnant, and then after about 60 days of not drinking, I sort of, like I said, I was getting fed up of being on the hamster wheel, and I was like, I just want to do something more with my life. I want to create something. I don't want to have to leave the house at 5:30 and get in at 8 o'clock at night. Especially because we've got a baby on the way. I would never see my child until the weekends, and I was just sort of thinking to myself, I need to do something different. And then I took a day off work, and I just spent a day sort of working on myself and just trying to figure out what could I do.
And this is really interesting to me, because this is like the call to adventure that we talk about almost in the hero's journey. There's just a sense of, do you know what? I'm sort of stuck in a bit of a rut. I'm working all these hours. It's not really adding much value to my life. What were you doing at that point? Because you were a tailor for a while, weren't you?
Yeah.
It's like in a sort of sales role.
Yeah. So I was like a visiting tailor. So I'd go to my clients' offices in the city and measure them up in their offices for suits. So I didn't make the suits. We had a team of tailors who made them, but I was the sales guy. I'd go out and, I'd generate orders, and it was hard, because the suits weren't cheap.
Yeah.
Some of they weren't cheap, and there's a lot of competition. And when I first started, I had like one of the best first years of a new person in our office. But then it seemed to get harder and harder. But I think maybe I'd sort of just lost love for it a little bit.
But yeah, that sort of passion for it. And I think what happens is you start to get called to this new adventure. Like there's something in you that's like, I just want to give back or do something a bit meaningful or purposeful.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm interested in, because your story then sort of starts to unfold alongside that, because obviously you decide to take a break from alcohol, which is not linked to that, but it suddenly sort of starts to present an opportunity maybe to do something a bit different.
Well, so on that day that I took off work, and I had a notepad, and I was sitting at the kitchen island, and I was writing down, brainstorming, writing down all sorts of things that I could do, or even coming up with this like genius idea, right? That you think the £1 million, £1 billion idea. What do people need? And I couldn't, there were so many different ideas, but then I was so interested in this alcohol-free space, and it sort of just clicked to me, because it's like, the good alcohol-free beers aren't in bars and restaurants at the time. And I thought, right, maybe I'll become a sales guy for these brands. But then I was like, well, but then I'm still working for someone else, and it's not my, and then I've always wanted to start my own business. And I thought there was a bit of a gap in the market, because the more and more I researched about alcohol-free, I realised that the drink can be quite nutritional. So like low calories, you can have vitamins in there. But no brands really promoted that. So I was sort of just surprised, because when I stopped drinking, I was living a healthier lifestyle, and I was conscious about what I was putting in my body.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, if I'm going to drink an alcohol-free drink, if it's got added benefits to it, like vitamins and stuff like that, then that's the one I'm going to pick. But no one promoted that. So, so I thought, right, let's start an alcohol-free beer brand and make a healthy one.
Right, yeah. So hold on, let's back up a bit there, because that is a massive leap. I'm taking you had zero idea how to do that, right? You don't have a background. It's not like your previous job was in brewing of any sort. So you decide that's what I'm going to do. Like, what happens then? How do you turn that from this idea into reality?
Yeah, well, it's looking back at it now, it just sort of, because a lot of people were saying to me, they're like, John, come on, just don't be ridiculous.
Yeah, what you're doing.
Look, yeah. And I don't think they were trying to sort of put me down, but I think they were just trying to sort of bring me back down from cloud nine, And,
yeah.
But I thought, right, I've got an idea. I'm never, unless you take the leap, you're never going to know, right? And it's like I can carry on working for a company and working long hours for someone else, but for the sort of life I wanted to live, I love my family, right? And especially when my wife told me she was pregnant, and the thought of our little, we didn't know what it was going to be then, but the thought of not seeing my child that much because I'll be working all the time, I thought, right, I need to create a life where I can live the life I want and work, but enjoy what I'm doing.
Yeah. So
yeah, it was like this, just a brainstorming session, really, just somewhat. And like I said, I had no experience in brewing, so it was all completely new. I had to work everything out. But I don't actually do any of the brewing. I'll leave that to the experts. So, but I had to find everyone. I had to find a brewer who would help me develop a recipe. I told him, I wanted to create a healthy beer, and we brewed so many different test runs, and you brew it, and it's like, yeah, great, the taste is great, and then you send it off for testing, and it's not particularly healthy, or it hasn't got the vitamins in it. So we did loads of different tests, but when we landed on the unlimited lager, we got the results back for the calories, and it was only 23 calories per bottle, which I think is still one of the lowest.
Oh yeah, I mean that is a massive, massive win for me, even personally, because I like to fast, so I'll fast every day, sort of 14, 16 hours. And we always had a little rule when we were fasting, you had to stay below 60 calories to sort of just about maintain a fast. Obviously, ideally, it's just water only. So that when I saw the unlimiteds as well, 23, I was like, I could sneak in a couple of them and still technically not have, tripped myself up on my fast, because the last thing I have of an evening is usually like an unlimited or an AF beer, if you know what I mean. So for me, that was a massive, massive winner.
Yeah. And so I was really pleased when we got the calories back for that. And then, so we test for vitamins. So the vitamins B6 and B12 are naturally in there, because when beer's brewed, the alcohol just kills off all the good stuff. Because that's just what alcohol does, right? It's a toxin of some sort. Because you're using natural grains and natural products, it's like when you eat vegetables, right? There's good stuff in vegetables because it's grown out of the ground, and so the same stuff goes into beer. But when alcohol develops, it kills all of that off. But we brew in a certain way where we never exceed 0.5%. So most of the good stuff stays in there. So we got the vitamins B6, B12 in there. It's gluten-free, vegan. So it ticked all the boxes for the health side.
Yeah.
One thing, sort of going back to what I said earlier about alcohol-free beers in bars, and with 0.5%. So when I first drank or considered drinking a 0.5% beer, I spoke to Andy Liddell, and he said to me, well, it's like the same as a banana or an orange juice.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
I was just like, no, it's not. And he's like, yeah. He goes, loads of natural stuff's got 0.5 in. So that put my mind to rest on that side of it, because I'm thinking if you're drinking 0.5, it's still alcohol. But
I think a lot of people have that concern. I must admit, I see that come up a lot. It's like, oh, can I sort of drink that? But I think the way the body metabolizes alcohol, because it can metabolize it, by the time you've drunk that 0.5%, it's worked through your system anyway. It's only when you're piling in the sort of 0.5s and above, and obviously that your body can't catch up, and that build up then causes that sort of fuzzy head and lack of mojo and momentum and all the negatives that come with it. Whereas at 0.05, you just couldn't almost physically drink them quick enough or enough of them to get into that place anyway. Therefore, for me, it's totally safe.
And the thing, when I decided to stop drinking, it was because I'd have like 2 beers, I'd be all right. I'd have 3, and then it's like, well, I've 4 beers, that's it, game over.
Yeah.
I would be out for hours, and I would drink 10, 12 beers, because 4 beers was my tipping point. Yeah. So, 0.5, I could drink these all day long, and it doesn't affect you in any way, because like I said, your body processes it as you're drinking it, and it clears it out. So you physically can't get drunk on it. So that's, for me, I stopped drinking because I didn't want to get drunk and then make those bad mistakes.
And then the taste which you've done just is stunning. And just one thing I want to ask, how do you find a master brewer? Like you're sitting there going, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this alcohol-free brand. Like, where do those people hang out? I don't know where they hang out. How did you sort of get the relationship? Because, again, you didn't have those skills to find the master brewer to sort of turn this into this sort of workable business.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember, actually, because I remember speaking with someone who gave me the details of this brewer. But I remember the first person I spoke to, I was like, look, I just want to do like a test run of making some beer. And I was like, I don't know, 5 litres, 10 litres. And she was like, we do like minimum 20,000 litres. I was like, okay.
That's going to take me a while to get through, especially if it's no good.
But then she goes, well, look, speak to this guy. He helps sort of develop recipes. So I spoke with this brewer, and then it was great. We developed the lager over the next 10 months, and I put all of my faith into him. I sort of gave him a spec of what I wanted it to be like, and while he was sort of busy making that, I then started working on finding an accountant, coming up with a name for the business, registering the business, doing the brand name, doing trademarks, and so this was all completely new. But it's quite exciting because it's not boring. Don't like your day-to-day job. It's normally the same thing day in, day out. And this was just like, right, I've got to do this. And then my to-do list just sort of went like this every
For it
day.
to the moon. And
Yeah,
I think
it
it's,
was.
I was saying to a lot of people about this, like entrepreneurship and creating businesses, which I've been involved in a lot now over the last few years. I think it's one of the most creative things that you can do. It's an incredibly creative process, whether it's brand names or whether it's ideas for content or courses or it's social media. There is so much going on that it becomes this just sort of wonderful, meaningful project that's just constantly driving creativity, and it's never the same, like you say. And I would encourage everyone listening, side hustle, and again, for the 8 of the last 10 years, I've had a full-time job. I know for a good while you were running it alongside your other job as well. I think when you've got your alcohol-free superpowers, there is time to become a coach or get out there and do different things. Do it before the world's awake. It's such a wonderful outlet that you can find tons of meaning and purpose. And I think that's what's really important about your story. Not only did you find that courage to think differently, you took this action. You found the master brewer. You started doing the work behind that, and it started to build this lovely momentum. So just quickly on a sort of technical standpoint, because I don't really understand it, when you said about brewing the alcohol free, what is the traditional method and how is it different, if you know what I mean, to sort of avoid the alcohol? Do they sort of remove it afterwards, or what happens?
Well, I think the way that and I'm not completely sure what other brands do, but I think the big players, like the big brands that we know of, I think they brew the beer as normal and then they sort of boil it off and strip out the alcohol at the end by boiling it off. But there's a few different ways you can. There's a thing called vacuum distillation where you can sort of it draws out the alcohol without burning it off.
Okay.
Because the burning off can give it a bit of a funny taste. But we use there's just a different brewing method where it just brews up to 0.5 and never exceeds it. So it's all about temperatures and timings. I still don't know a lot about.
Is that why you maintain some of those vitamins, I guess, because you're not burning them off with alcohol and then you're just trying to strip it out? You're actually never getting to that point, therefore it's retaining
all the good stuff stays in.
Brilliant. I love it. And for me, that's what is so different about the actual beer itself. And genuinely, I've said this openly, I love it. And I'm not just saying it to you on the podcast, and that. It's really different. It hits different. 23 calories. I'm just loving it. But just to come back to the story of actually growing this thing, right? Because you've got these alcohol-free superpowers. You've just taken a break from alcohol. I mean, what stage are you at this, with your relationship with alcohol? Because you're still quite really new to it in many ways, weren't you?
Yeah. So I'm not completely teetotal. So I do drink on the odd occasion now. So when I stopped originally, when I came up with this idea, I aimed for 90 days and I got to 112. And then my mate invited me out, who was like my drinking partner growing up. And because I'd done my 90 days, I thought, you know what? I'm going to have a drink. Celebrate.
With the very thing that I've been avoiding. I know. I mean, that is just a classic celebration. I would normally do that after 2 weeks. It'd be like, I feel amazing. Yeah, I've got my mojo back, sleeping really well. I'll know what I'll do. I'll have a couple of drinks. Like, what are we doing? It's such a common thing.
But that's what. So I went out with him, and I had about 5 pints. And after the first pint, I regretted it. After the 5th pint, I was having a great time. But then the next day, I was in a world of pain because my body was cleansed, right? It's detox from alcohol, and 5 pints was nowhere near probably what I would have used to drink, but it absolutely killed me the next day for the next few days. So I didn't drink again for 3 months. So I sort of had a massive gap again, and now, so like you said, when I'm at home, especially in the last year, because we haven't been able to go out, I drink alcohol-free beer because it satisfies my need. I like the taste of it, and then having a hangover with a baby is like the worst thing in the world.
Oh,
so
no, it's like times 1,000.
Yeah. So and then every now and again, I might go out and see a friend who I haven't seen for a while, and I'll have a couple of drinks, but my relationship with drinking is like worlds apart from what it used to be.
It's been transformed.
Yeah, because whereas like now I look at it and I know, I think ahead and I think about, right, how am I going to feel the next day? Whereas before it'd be like, right, I'm going to feel crap tomorrow, but then I'm going to go out again, so I'll just drink it off and I'll be fine. And then, but that was probably 3 or 4 years of living like that, and it was just the norm. And it's not until you come out of it and then you think, Christ, I feel so much more alive and doing so much more. Everything's better. That is sort of like, I won't go back.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's that limitless. We're building up, and we'll get to that name in a second. But like, you're just building this sort of momentum now. What were the sort of obstacles that you faced? It couldn't have just been this lovely linear trajectory to where you are today. I'm sure there were some big sort of stumbling blocks. Let alone the fact that you had no experience in this area at
Yeah.
all.
There's been, and there still is. There's still like loads of, because what I always say to my wife and my family and friends is like, when there's a problem, there's no one to go to. It's not like you've got a boss, right? So, but in a way, you just got to figure it out. You've got to figure out, and you've got to make a solution to whatever the problems. But there's been loads of issues. So there's been issues with people that I've sort of worked with, like contractors, who, some people have taken advantage of you because you're, a new brand. You don't really know what. I'd go. So we've changed brewery because we contract brew. So I'll pay a brewer. I'll go with the recipe and I'll ask them to make the beer. And we've changed 5 breweries since we started last June, just because we've outgrown them. And but along the way, there's been some breweries. They've charged me extortionate pricing, compared to industry sort of standard. They've not delivered products, and they've made me have to. I've had, in our agreement, there was they were going to deliver it to our warehouse, and then on the last minute they didn't. So there's a lot of people who sort of take advantage, but that's a learning curve, right? And I'm just going back to the sort of reason why I wanted to start the brand is that I didn't just want to create a business which would sort of provide me a living and look after my family, but something that actually had a good meaning behind it and would sort of leave a positive impact on the world without being too cheesy. Is that I want to do something good. Like selling suits before what I did, it make people feel good because they were in clothes that fit them well, but with this beer, I know how much it changed my life by giving up. And if I can provide people with a good alcohol-free beer that helps them stay off, getting pissed or drinking too much, then that's doing a good thing, right? And that's sort of what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and I think it is so important to have that mission focused, and it drives meaning and purpose. And now you're part of the revolution, because it's happening in such a big way, and I'm so excited. And again, Unlimited and the brand, it just looks good. It's if you've got a bottle there, you can hold up even for anyone that's watching. But it's like sort of black and silver lettering, and it just looks smart. I like it. It's powerful, if you know what I mean. That's exactly what I want from the alcohol-free space. It's not something we should be ashamed of. It's like, I'm all over this stuff, and I'm drinking this. It tastes nicer than yours, and it's cooler than yours, and there's no booze in it. So I'm going to wake up tomorrow full of mojo when you're struggling in bed. That's the difference right there, and I love it, and I love the courage that you've shown to take it to this place. So here you are. You're sort of building it up, and then at what point, when we met, where was the business at that point? Because I don't think you actually had any sort of beer, particularly at that stage.
So that was in January, I think, that event, January 2019. So I registered the business in September of 2018. Hang on. No, when did I see it? It must have been 20. I can't remember when I saw you at the event.
I think it's 28. Your wife was still pregnant.
God, this is bad. I'm going to forget when my daughter was born. So she was born 2020. So it must have been December. It must have been January last year.
Yeah.
January 2020. Because we launched in June. Yeah, that's right. So, we didn't have the beer at that point. I didn't have the beer name. I knew what I was halfway along the process, but it was really funny because I was meeting Andy Liddell and our other mutual friend at this mindful drinking festival. And there was murmurs that you were going to be there. And then I saw you, because obviously I listened to your podcast and I looked at you online and stuff. And my wife, she always jokes about it, because I was standing there talking to her, and then I just caught you out the corner of my eye, and she just said, she just went like, died off for you.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I've got to tell Andy, because, listening to your podcast changed everything for me, and all the different, you had a similar life to what I had.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I've got to tell Andy and what I'm doing. And you probably thought, who's this nutter who's just like bounced up to me? But But I was like, I've got to tell him, and then it was great. You know, in June, just before we properly launched, I messaged you and I said, Andy, I've done it. I'm going to send you some beer, and you kindly accepted it.
You did. He sent me a beautiful note with it, and genuinely, back to that sort of quote I said right at the start, that dreamer of the day, and I could sort of hear it and feel it in your voice, and you were proud, and it was like, do you know what? I'm going to make this happen. But you didn't have a name at that stage. You didn't have any beer, but it was like, you know, I'm here.
I think I did have a name, because I think I said
to you, I
think it's unlimited, limited, and I said because of Limitless.
Oh, that's right, you did.
Yeah, because I knew you referred to Limitless before.
I did a podcast called The Limitless, a TED Talk called The Limitless Pill, all about the same thing, based on Bradley Cooper, and like, just imagine if that pill was real. And I'm like, it is. All you got to do is take a break from alcohol, because I always refer back to that brilliant study by a guy called Professor Kevin Moore of the London Royal Free Hospital. This was the biggest ever study into a 28-day break from alcohol for middle lane drinkers, which I describe you and I as people that drink averagely, sometimes heavily, sometimes not at all, sometimes moderately, which is basically everyone on the planet. But they did this piece of research. It was the largest ever piece of research into, again, just normal drinkers, let's say. It was a 28-day dry Jan. They tracked them. And at the end of that, the results were just so astounding. It was more or less quote unquote from Professor Kevin Moore, because on average participants lost 3 kilograms in weight, if I remember, 40% of their liver fat. They reduced their risk of type 2 diabetes and certain types of cancer. And he said, Professor Kevin Moore at the end, more or less quote unquote, if these results were found in a pill form, everyone would want it and it would be worth billions.
Yeah.
And that was, for me, was just, it's like the Limitless pill. It's there. So when you settled on the unlimited, I was like, he's nailed it again. I absolutely love that. And it's just nice that you've got that story behind it. I think makes it even more powerful. And just on that note, who came up with the branding? Because I love it. The powerful branding. Was that you? Or was...
Yeah, well, I worked with a designer, but I basically gave him the sort of spec for it, because you'll know with the craft beer market at the moment, and it always has been, really, it's really colourful, and there's some cans and there's some beer labels that are like awesome, but they all look the same to me. And where I used to go and drink in London, I'd want something that just looked a little bit more grown up, because some of the sort of the craft cans, they just look. It's more about how, I don't know what's the best way to say it, but they all look the same, and they just look a bit gimmicky to me.
A bit cartoony, don't they, some of them? It's a bit strange. I don't know why they do that.
Yeah, and I think it's appealing because it's like people like the artwork on it, but when I was looking at the alcohol-free beers, I just sort of thought there's not really any that are just I like very simplistic things. So I remember I was sitting thinking about this, how I want it to look, and I had my Apple Watch on, and I was just like, I just like the simplicity of it. It's like black, silver, not too much going on. And so that was basically my spec. And so then I worked with a designer, and he'd created all the files, like, computer files for it. But then finding, I said I want a black glass bottle because no one else had it. And I found, this was one of the stumbling blocks I came up against. So I found a supplier who had black glass bottles, and I was like, brilliant, buy some from them. And then I bought, I think it was like 15,000 in the first run that I bought from them. And then as we were selling that, but you have, because that was like, these are going to sort of big, but you're not buying like 15 bottles. Yeah. And I was like, well, I know I've thrown everything into this. I've got to brew a big batch to start with. So, but as we started to sell out, I went back to the bottle supply, and I was like, right, I need some more bottles. They were like, yeah, we don't make them anymore. I was like, okay, well, how many do I have to order for you to make them? They said 5 million.
Oh, did they?
I was like, right. And
I'm just a little bit short of that. Yeah.
Because they're more expensive. The thing with the black bottles, they're double the price of the brown and the green bottles. But for me, it's about what's inside, right? So the beer tastes great. I'm obviously going to say it, but it does. It tastes great.
It does.
But I want something that looks good as well. And people, it's like people with cars, right? Why would people buy nicer cars when they can get somewhere in another cheaper old banger? But it's people like something that looks nice. So I just stuck with it. But anyway, I found another supplier who still makes them. fingers crossed they still make they carry on making them for me.
Yeah, let's hope so. And what I like about the bar, and this is important to me because I think I was on holiday, funnily enough, and I was chatting to one of the barmen on holiday, and he was saying when someone ordered an alcohol-free beer, it just spread around the room. He said it was always the same. One person would order it, and he'd see 2 or 3 more people order it, and that got me to thinking about the alcohol-free brands that try and look exactly like alcoholic brands. That there's no symbolism around the fact that I'm drinking something that's alcohol free because it sort of looks like all the alcohol. So if you walk into a bar, it's going to give you the impression everyone's drinking, let's just say everyone's drinking beer, everyone's drinking alcoholic beer because they'll look the same. Whereas what I love is the idea about a bit of a statement. So I think that's what I like about Unlimited and the branding behind it. It's like, I'm all over this stuff. I want people to know I'm not drinking alcohol. That's important to me. I'm not trying to hide in the shadows anymore and blend in like perfectly with everyone else. I sort of want to make a bit of a statement because I know someone else in the room might see me drinking something that's clearly alcohol free because they recognize the brand. They're much more likely to have the confidence to go, actually, just looking around the room, a third of the room are not even drinking. They're drinking alcohol free brands. Ship it in. I'll have some of that rather than walking in and going,
Yeah.
I'm going to be the only one that's not drinking. When actually that's probably not true anymore. But again, I think that's probably clever from the alcohol brands, right? Because let's be honest, what they're thinking about is selling their alcohol. So if they make everything look like that, it gives the impression everyone's drinking, but you're different. And I want to just pinpoint that at the moment. That is what I love about what you're doing. What's important for me, what you're doing, is that you've come at this from that slightly mission-led focus. You've had that experience yourself, and this is purely alcohol-free. And that's important to me because obviously you've got all the big beer brands, and the reason they're all over the alcohol-free stuff is not out the kindness of their own hearts, it's because the demand is there. You know, the consumers are demanding quality alcohol-free alternatives, and if they don't produce it, we're going to go and get it somewhere else. So that, I think, is why they're in the market, not because from that almost purist standpoint where you are, because it's purely alcohol-free. Other great brands, Athletics, Brewing as another great one that I really like, but in that same space of just being purely alcohol free, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, and you mentioned it in your live this morning. It's sort of like sheep's in what is it? A wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah,
with some of the bigger brands, but that was one of the reasons I decided when I was sort of thinking, right, what am I going to do with my life? Was coming up with alcohol free because I was so passionate about it, and I saw how good it was. It was good it was for me. But then I saw how much it was growing. So obviously it's still a tiny percentage, right, of people probably don't drink. It's like in the last 2 years, it's changed massively. But back in 2019, when I first was sort of thinking about this, it was, I was probably less than 1% of the population who didn't drink. Or, that's why there's so much stick around it. That's why they used to be. But now, and that was the reason I started the brand, was because I wanted to drink good alcohol-free beers when I went out, but they just didn't have good ones in the places that I went to. So I was like, right, I don't know anything about beer, but I'm going to make a brand and I'm going to go and sell it to bars and restaurants. And reality is now, it's like I actually don't do any selling because I just don't have the time.
And where is it with that? So is it going to be in bars and restaurants? How's the distribution going?
So we launched on our website in June, which was in sort of lockdown 1. We then got listed with all the other online retailers who specialise in alcohol free. So like 90% of them bought Unlimited, so they stock it now. So obviously we've been in COVID for the last year, so nothing's really been open. We launched on Amazon in January. So we sell on there now. So in a way, COVID's been a bit of a blessing in disguise from the business standpoint, because if the bars were open, it would be, I just wouldn't have the time to go out. So in a way, I've set up all of the online channels that I can, but we've got a sales team now funnily enough, Drake and Morgan bars in London. You probably know a couple of them. There's about 10 of them, I think, in London. That's where I met with my wife. Outside one of those when I was a little bit drunk, but all of their bars are stocking it from the end of this month.
I love it.
People can sit inside, so they're stocking it. There's another bar group in London that's stocking it, and there's a few other bars which are buying kegs from us. So it's going to be on tap in a few places in the next few weeks.
Different level.
And then so we're listed in wholesalers now. So getting listings in the wholesalers is huge, because most bars will buy from a wholesaler. They'll buy,
Yeah.
they won't buy their peanuts from a peanut man and their beers from a beer man. They'll go to a supermarket, if you like, and buy it all in one place. So we're listed in about 4 or 5 big wholesalers. We've just got listings in them. So yeah, it should spread pretty quickly now, hopefully.
I mean, it's just amazing hearing the story from, you taking a break from alcohol to that point of, do you know what? I need more meaning and purpose in my life. And then actually having that brainstorming day where you're like, what will I do? Maybe there's something in this alcohol-free thing. And then thinking, I know what it is. It's an alcohol-free beer with no experience. And then the sort of twists and turns of having the courage to do it, bumping into me and going, it's happening. Just when you had the name, between the black bottles being there and not being there, and the branding, and sort of here you are now, like on that sort of precipice of this becoming a really big thing. And I think it's going to be huge, and getting into like the wholesalers and into like pubs and clubs, exactly where I want to go. And I want to buy a bottle and I want to stand there and be proud of it and get that momentum going, because I think that will sell it as well. I mean, it's just such a brilliant story. I mean, I'm so chuffed to even in any ways have been a part of it and to help promote everything that you do. So what's the future for you and Unlimited?
So, well, we've also another sort of quite a bit like an overwhelming or a bit of a surreal thing. So we're exporting now to Australia, Singapore, and the UAE. And just think, and so I've got friends in Australia who used to work for the L2 company, and they've bought some of the beer. And it's just really weird that the beer's on the other side of the planet, and it's just a very sort of surreal experience. But the next big thing for us is realistically now it's bars reopening, because that's been basically we launched in lockdown, so I've only ever known the online side of the business, which has been brilliant, and it's gone really well. And we've like I said, we've outgrown breweries, but we've moved to a new brewery, and this is another sort of full circle. So the first alcohol-free beer that I tried, which alcohol-free craft beer that I liked, I won't name it, but the new brewery that we're brewing at brews their beer.
Oh,
so
brilliant.
the alcohol-free beer that made me think, actually, alcohol-free beer is all right. The brewery make their beer. That's making our beer now, which is like, that in itself is like, blows my mind. But no, so we scaled up massively, and we've got the sales team now who are hitting the road, selling it into bars and restaurants, and, potentially going to get into some of the big retailers as well. So it's sort of just riding the wave.
And what about different flavours? You've been talking about an IPA. Is that ready to go?
So IPA being delivered to our warehouse today. Literally got notification earlier. So that's been in development for over a year. The IPA, so it's available to buy on our website. There'll be all the pre-orders that people have ordered have been shipped out tomorrow. So they'll get it on Saturday. We sold most of it on our pre-orders, which was amazing. But when we've got the nutritional test back for the IPA, it's only 13 calories.
Is it? That's just different levels.
I couldn't believe it. But it tastes amazing. It tastes amazing, because I think, so I got the test results back before I drank it, right? Because when you do small batches, then you do when you go to a big batch, it could taste completely different, because you've got to scale up the recipes, right?
Yeah.
So, but we scaled it up, sent it off for testing. I then tasted it. I was like, it tastes awesome. Really happy with it. And then we got the results back, and 13 calories. And I was just like, I think that is the lowest alcohol-free beer, I think.
On the market. And also,
I mean, it's one in Canada that's not available over here, which is like 7, but 13 calories is just like unheard of.
It's amazing. It is amazing. And, it's that sort of isotonic then. It almost becomes, like Erdinger sort of positions itself, doesn't it, in that way, that it's like a recovery drink at the end of, exercise and whatnot, because it's got all those refreshing vitamins in there, because the way that it's created, it's 13 calories and it tastes lovely and it's grown up. I mean, that is just a different level right there. I think that's going to absolutely fly. I need to get my hands on some of that.
Yeah, I've told the warehouse to send you some, so you'll get some.
Oh, good.
Next week.
That is one of the small perks. Right, I'm looking forward to that. I'll be all over that. So it's just like onwards and upwards. I'm so thrilled that you've joined me today and just to share that story. And I think that's going to be really inspirational to a lot of people on lots of levels, not only just the fact that you took a break from alcohol and like many of us found yourself in that position of just being a bit meh and doing something different, but that like tug to something more gave you the courage to start this business without knowing anything about it, all those twists and turns. And here you are, you know, you're in various different countries. You're about to launch IPA. You're about to be nationwide in all the pubs and clubs. I just think it's a super story, and I'm just privileged and thrilled to be a little part of it. And anything I can do in the future to help you will be amazing, my man, because you're an absolute legend. It's been a real pleasure to have you with me today.
No, thanks for having me, Andy. And like I said, it's, you know, without sort of it being cheesy, it's like your listening to your podcast with Rich Roll was sort of the light switch moment, and then listening to all the subsequent podcasts on UNTLD.BEER that you did interviewing people. It was, you know, there's so many people, like you said at the very start with Andy Liddell, it's if you can help one person, because like without Andy Liddell having that chat with me, like my life probably would have been the same. It's like completely different now, and that's only one person that I know of that he's a, you know, but I know he does a great thing on for the community on UNTLD.BEER, and yeah, I think it's great. No, but I want to thank you because it's you've always been you know, it's great to listen to you and it's great to watch your lives and stuff. So thanks for having me on.
No, I absolutely love it, and we'll do this again. I'm looking forward to those IPAs. Top man.
And
yeah,
I just want to say thank you to all the unlimited customers, because on the live this morning, there's so many names that were coming up in the comments list, and I recognise them because I see them come through on the online orders. And so thank you everyone who orders unlimited, because it's it helps grow the brand, and it's nice to know people like the beer.
Exactly. And so where can people find you? That's what we should do.
So our website, www.UNTLD.BEER, so like unlimited.beer. We're on there. We sell on Amazon. We're on the our social media is unlimited.beer, so UNTLD.BEER, and we're on your types into Google, you'll see where we are.
Love it. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Let's do this. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, mate.